I gotta be honest, I don't really know how else to put it other than the fact that our country is broken. Politically speaking, socially, culturally, no matter where you turn, no matter what you're doing, there's an immense amount of divisiveness, and it pretty much all falls onto the head of Justin Trudeau. He's the one that has been steering the ship, and to be honest, he's got us headed right towards an iceberg, and people are already jumping ship. And what's going on right now in Canada is and was completely avoidable, but it's going to take a lot of time to fix. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. We're taking a look at a couple different things. We're taking a look at these pro-Palestinian protests that have erupted over the weekend and caused absolute chaos and mayhem in the streets of Canada, calling for the death of not only, people abroad, but also people here in Canada. And then we're taking a look at a bit of an analysis into what we're going to expect this upcoming week, or I guess this week, with Justin Trudeau. So buckle up and hope you stick around for the full thing, because this is, not only informative, but I guess kind of entertaining. But it does come at people's expense. So this is in Ottawa, and this footage is captured by C-Squared News on X. I'm so done with these terrorist supporters. Older lady throws water at me and a cop. And half the time they do this, they get away with it. It's insane.
I'm gonna make them keep moving.
Allahu Akbar.
Watch this. I'm letting them get their steps in. Watch them get their steps in. I don't have to shh. This is my country. No.
So they're praying in the middle of the streets.
When I ask you to be quiet. No. No. Yeah, it is. You're disrespecting my streets. You guys are disrespecting my streets. You're gonna throw water at me? Oh, that's assault. She just got me. She just assaulted me. That's assault. I want her charged. She got me. That's assault. Charge her, bitch. Charge the bitch. That's assault. She follow me? Yeah, because you assaulted me and I want you charged. Get her charged. She's throwing water at people. She threw water on a cop.
Cannot be doing that.
What's your name? What's your name? You're gonna go viral now. What's your name? What's your name? You can throw water. Can you say your name? Or are you a coward?
That's not called for.
That's not called for. So in the world of a police state here in Canada, if you or I were to go and do something like this to the Palestinian protesters and supporters, we would be handcuffed, taken away, locked up for quite some time, and it just wouldn't end well. But when they attack, Canadians that are pro-Canada, whether it's, whether or not there was any instigation, you're not forced to be silent in the middle of the streets of Ottawa for a prayer. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And so this whole thing is absurd. Like, the fact is that there was an actual assault that just took place, and the police's response is to sit down and have a nice, solid, but not solid talk with the person who committed the assault. I don't get it, man. I don't get it at all. And that wasn't the only time water was thrown at this person. Let's take a look at another episode here.
Look at this. Look at this.
I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything. We're alone. Why are you picking on little kids? You know you're pathetic, right? You're fucking pathetic.
You're two-bit.
You're a crackhead.
Two-bit.
No,
Two-bit.
you're a bucket.
Two-bit.
You're a bucket.
Two-bit.
You're a crackhead.
Two-bit.
You're a crackhead.
Two-bit. I don't have to go. You don't tell me what to do.
Back up.
2275. What's your name?
2275.
What's your name?
It's 2275.
Can't articulate a name?
No, I can't.
You're just a number?
Exactly.
Fuck off, bitch.
What's your name?
That's a complaint. 2 pieces of ID. That's your policy. You have to give name and badge number when asked by the public.
2275.
You're dumb, bitch.
What the hell is going on in Canada, man? The cops are not trustworthy. The cops are not doing their job. The cops are allowing this to escalate beyond repair. I mean, it's insane. No matter how you look at it, whether you support the Palestinian protests, whether you're a Canadian and you're like, hey, I just think we should be focusing here on Canadian issues. It's just it's insanity what's going on. I don't recognize Canada at all.
Stop protecting the terrorists. Come back. That's called a come back. I already got your face locks. Now you're ashamed? Now you're ashamed of giving the finger? You're giving the finger to a Canadian? Shame, shame, shame. Shame, 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 shame. Shame, 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 shame on you. Shame. No, waste your time on me. Come on. You have no idea, you terrorist. Hey, Freddie. Farouk is on fire. Farouk is on fire. Farouk is on fire.
So again, I feel like the whole plot has been lost here in Canada. Like, I understand they're protesting. They want a ceasefire. They want maybe the government to recognize a two-state solution. But nonetheless, Canada has no say in the war in the Middle East. Like, none. Whether there's an arms embargo or not, it doesn't matter. It's not going to stop the war. In fact, Canada is doing the most for Palestinians, people of Lebanon, people in Gaza. We've sent $25+ million within the last couple of weeks to Lebanon to help with, all of the victims of the back and forth tug of war, all the bombings that have happened, plus all the humanitarian aid and supplies that we've sent into Gaza, plus Gaza refugees that are coming here to Canada. So Canada's doing a whole lot. But again, you go ask any of these Palestinian protesters, by showing up today to protest, what is your mission statement? What is your objective? What do you want? What are you protesting for the thing to change? And again, they'd say, we want the war to stop. Well, again, the answer would be Canada doesn't have that power, but Canada is spending a lot of money on helping those that are affected by this. So anyways, over the heads of those that are protesting. And then you have in a different part of Canada, that was in Ottawa. Let's take a look at what was going on. I believe this is in Toronto.
Bye-bye, Sima. Bye-bye, Nasrallah. Bye-bye, Nasrallah.
You want to have a back?
Bye-bye, Haniya.
You want to have one?
Bye-bye,
10
Sima.
seconds.
All right, we got some more here. Prayers in the middle of Montreal. They've got, they're taking their shoes off. Like, it's the whole shebang, right? I'm not exactly totally familiar on what the process is, but they are replicating it in the streets of Canada, which makes Canada seem a little bit unrecognizable at the moment in certain parts.
We make it very clear. We have nothing to hide. As Palestinians,
You're hiding your
as
faces.
Arabs, as non-Arabs,
You have
we
lots to
stand
hide.
with our resistance.
Hiding your faces.
We
You're
stand
getting
with
a
our
report.
resistance.
You're
to
fucking getting a
liberate,
report
to
filed on
liberate
you.
Palestine.
You're gonna
the
get
holy
charged,
land of
bitch.
Palestine. We make it very clear. We have
Alrighty. So obviously tensions are quite high. And then this is another shot here from Ottawa.
Israel has no right to defend itself. Israel should never even have rights to begin with. But you know who does and you know who should? It's our resistance in Gaza and the West Bank and Yemen and Lebanon and Iraq.
Israel should not have the right to defend itself. That's kind of a crazy thing to say. And then you have this other one here. It's not a true pro-Hamas rally in Ottawa unless you tell the Jews to go back to Europe.
all the Zionists around us. One more time. They claim they are indigenous, but they all came from Europe. Leave Palestine alone, leave Palestine alone, leave Palestine alone. Then go back to Europe. They claim they are indigenous. Louder! Leave Palestine alone. Leave All the Zionists are...
All right. And so this kind of seems to be a reoccurring trend with these protests where it's not, hey, let's live, in harmony. We can all live, not together, but equally. And it's like either the extermination of one group or the extermination of another. And the fact that this has been going on for over a year in Canada, just it boggles my mind. I mean, when I was like significantly younger and I was never exposed to protests or just culture wars or politics even, if you gave me this knowledge of like what happens today in Canada, give that to me 15 years ago, I'd been like, no way, that just seems crazy. You wouldn't have people literally in the streets of Canada outside of Parliament in front of police officers chanting for the death of other either Canadians or other ethnicities or religious groups. That's not happening. Yep. It turns out that it really is. So I've shared my opinion, and of course, I would love to know yours down below in the comments. And next, we're taking a look at the fact that the sharks are circling Justin Trudeau is what CTV News is calling it. So they're bringing back Parliament today. It's going to be an insane day. I highly recommend that you go over to my other channel, House of Canada, which is linked down below in the description, because that's where we're going to be live streaming question period when it does take place, and you're not going to want to miss a single beat of that. Let's take a look at this analysis here.
Fewer of them in the case of my own party, but there are safe seats in the country.
And the statement that NSCOP makes is
that was a joke. You guys can laugh.
The Prime Minister this week with a joke there about two recent significant by-election losses for the Liberals, a moment of levity in a week that was full of anything but. Several sources tell CTV News a group of backbench MPs are working together to formally ask Justin Trudeau to step aside as Liberal leader, and they plan to verbally convey their concerns to him at Caucus this Wednesday. And one MP is already going on the record, publicly saying it's time for Trudeau to go.
My constituents are saying that they cannot vote for him. And I felt that I owed it to them to say that in a public manner and not as an undisclosed source. And that's why I did what I did.
Now, those comments come as four more cabinet ministers announced just days ago they won't seek re-election in the next federal election. The minister responsible for the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, Philomena Tassi, is one of those ministers, as is Sports Minister Carla Qualtrough, National Revenue Minister Marie-Claude Bibeau, and Northern Affairs Minister Dan Van Daal. Since the summer, that brings the number of cabinet ministers announcing they won't run again to 6, half of whom stated they're leaving for personal reasons. Our Sunday strategy session is here to dig into what all of that means for the Prime Minister and his leadership. And Corey, I'll start with you. If you look at all that we just laid out, what do you think the impact on the Prime Minister's leadership is or will be?
Well, nothing good, that's for sure. Talk about having a bad week. Whether it'll make a difference or not, I guess time will tell. We'll see. But having a mini caucus revolt is not something any leader is stronger for having gone through. And losing former cabinet ministers, it's well, I don't think they're joining a revolt against him. I think they're doing what a lot more people are probably going to do, which is just quietly look for the exit and get out of there before the whole thing falls down. So. Look, all the polling says the Prime Minister should leave. What's in the best interest of his party certainly indicates that he should leave. Increasingly, people who are worried about losing their seat are going to be saying he should leave. Whether he will leave or not is, I guess, the question. And so far, the answer's been no.
To Corey's point, Scott, those cabinet ministers certainly, talked about their own reasons for leaving. But I can tell you, all the MPs I spoke to on that day conveyed to me there will be many more MPs who make a similar decision. That seemed to be something like multiple people were reacting to the news with. What does that tell you?
Well, look, the old Bob Dylan song, it's not dark yet, but it's getting there. And that increasingly describes the situation around the Prime Minister. We don't know exactly what's going to happen next week. We don't know if in the middle of this whole international crisis with India and everything else that's going on, that you're going to see 30 people stand up and demand that he quit in his own caucus. But those people are there. That is undeniable. And so, the challenge for the Prime Minister is that since June 24th, which he's joking about, there's been nothing. And that vacuum has been filled with frustration on the part of the backbench, where they're saying, well, are we to just go gently into that good night? Maybe not. Maybe we need to push back. And I think it's really less of a revolt than more of a reaction to the non-response from the Prime Minister and those around him about how they're going to make an adjustment, what they're going to do, is there a plan to become more competitive? And so I really do think that more and more people are going to say, all right, forget it then, I'm not going to run again. Some will gather and step forward and say he shouldn't run again. But all of it has the great, absolutely distinct odor of fin de regime around it.
Kathleen, I think the Prime Minister this week, seemed to tacitly try and send a message or acknowledge what Scott just mentioned, and then send a message that there is fight in the way that he sort of navigated the foreign interference inquiry and leveled some pretty serious accusations at the Conservative Party. But ultimately, right away, the next day, the story was 4 cabinet ministers are leaving, despite the reasons that they're putting forward. Do you think the conversation around the Prime Minister is ultimately changing? Because they have remained very steadfast until now in their insistence he will be.
So we know a couple of things heading into this week. We know that prorogation is not on the table. We know that the people that are coming forward to express their dissatisfaction with Justin Trudeau, they are backbenchers with maybe a couple of people that we might recognize their name in their face. And we know that the deadline for the Bloc Québécois to get OAS support is coming up in 8 days, right? October 29th. Did I get that right? So I mean, everything is happening within the next 10 days, right? And so in terms of what's going to happen, I don't know if this is going to trigger an election. I'm obviously quite optimistic. I've been holding on to that optimism for so long, and there's only so much longer that someone can possibly hold on to it before they're going to borderline a little bit cuckoo. And I feel like I'm treading along that line. But nonetheless, this week right now is going to set the course for what is actually going to happen, if anything, before they take off for Christmas.
Leading the party into the next election.
So what we're hearing from inside, liberal circles and around Parliament Hill is that they are planning to fight. But you kind of have to wonder, they didn't fight after Toronto St. Paul's. They didn't really put out the fight after Nanaimo Caucus this past summer, and not again after losing LaSalle, Verdun. So what has changed? Certainly there's more blood in the water after the announcement of these 4 cabinet ministers that are not going to reoffer again. And the sharks are circling. So what's going to happen next Wednesday? And I think the questions you have to ask yourself is, when this, rumor revolt comes to, the fore, how many people are there? Is it 20? Is it 30? If it's 50, it's almost game over. But how large will it be? And the second question is, who are they? Are they people of import? Do Canadians know them? I would argue that Canadians didn't really know those 4 cabinet ministers that just announced they're not going to resign. And also, what will these caucus members, these backbenchers that are going to call for Justin Trudeau to resign, actually do? Will they sit as independents? Will they possibly vote against the government? Will they vote with the Conservatives, maybe on a non-confidence motion? That would be more damning. But we have to obviously see a plan. And if they don't come to caucus with a plan this Wednesday, and instead just kind of once again put their fingers in their ears and cover their eyes and ignore the reality on the ground, they're in a lot of trouble. Not just the poll trouble, but they're in trouble facing possible even greater revolt.
I think Kathleen's point is really well taken, Corey, that it will really lots will depend on what happens this week in the size and the scope and the message that is ultimately delivered. But her other point is well taken too. They've had a few days now to come up with a response to something they know is brewing, right? Even at a minimum among a handful of MPs, but maybe many more. Do you think the stakes are high for the way in which they navigate that?
Very high. And look, whether they do some of the more harsh things that Kathleen suggested or not, it's still not good news. It's, I guess there are levels of degree. If you could look back to the Stockwell Day era and having people sitting as independents outside your caucus, that's the most extreme version. I don't think it'll come to that. But look, said on our podcast last week that they may not be in a full-on affair right now, but they're signing up on Ashley Madison. It doesn't bode well for the marriage. I think the other element of this is look, who's out defending him in caucus? The silence is almost.
Okay, so you've got the main people, the front runners. You got Karina Gould, you got LeBlanc, you have Chrystia Freeland, you got Francois Champagne. Like, you got some of the main figureheads, Mark Miller, Sean Fraser. Those people are defending him. But aside from the literal, you can fit the same amount of, kind of more well-known liberals in one or two hands. There's not a lot, right? There's not 15 liberal MPs that are like superstars in terms of how big their name is, in Canada. And so there's not a whole lot of support. In fact, there's probably 10 times, 20 times as much lack of support for Justin Trudeau within his cabinet than there is actual support. And it's going to shatter. It's going to shatter the entirety of their inner circle, right? It's not good. Even if it happened to the Conservatives, it absolutely would not be good.
Just as damning as the names on a list, right? Like, there's no enthusiasm for him, even amongst those people who are still tacitly backing his leadership.
Yeah, there was a few MPs this week, Scott, who sent an email saying, hey, guys, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, this isn't making us look good. But even that didn't, it's not like, this has been now reported for well over a week. It's not like many people are jumping out to get in front of a camera and say, this is a shame, it shouldn't happen, or I'm not associated with this whatsoever. None of that has happened.
No, and maybe we'll see some of those cards get played this week if the PMO decides it wants to mount some sort of proactive defense in anticipation of Wednesday's National Caucus. But look, this thing operates at two levels. I think it's really important to remember that. Sure, there's the Sturm and Drang of, what's going to happen on Wednesday, and will there be 20 or 30, and will they be important people, and all of that. And that can either be more dramatic or less dramatic. But the fundamental problem remains. You're 20 points behind in the polls. You're barely hanging in there with the NDP. You've signaled zero change since losing the St. Paul's by-election on June 24th. That's going on 6 months now. The Prime Minister says he's going to hang on to his job, but he doesn't say why and what is so indispensable about him being here. What people get when they vote for him for the next term, for the future, not asking for credit for what you've done. And so that is the second level at which nothing is happening. That's the fundamental issue. And it doesn't matter to a certain degree how loud MPs are or are not. If the Prime Minister and his team don't fix that, then they cannot win the next election. And it's over. So it can be over in a whole variety of ways. But right now, they are doing nothing to make it better. And that's what's so damned puzzling.
Last word to you, Kathleen.
Yeah, I guess if we want to put our strategy hats on and say, how could they turn this around? They do still have 7 weeks before the House rises for Christmas. So what can they do in that time? Like what can they, roll out? They've got a couple confidence votes they're going to have to face, both from the Conservatives and the Democrats. How do they manage those? Could they dangle some money to the provinces? We just saw the deal happen with Manitoba in terms of the school lunches. Could that happen across the country? We're facing a number of elections across the country. Obviously, BC and New Brunswick, but there could also be Saskatchewan, but there is Saskatchewan, but there could also be Nova Scotia being called really soon. So that could change some of the dynamic too. And we are seeing, the polls are bad. Corey said it. We've all read it. We know the polls are bad. But we're also seeing upticks in Poilievre's negatives. That's a fact. It's not overwhelming, but his negatives are going up, and people are
no, they're not.
In more to the politics of this game. So, in the case of imagining what is the art of the possible, they could do something, but they've got to bring a plan. They've got to bring a plan. They've got to execute on something, and they've got to show their team that they're going to move forward.
Okay.
They can do things. He could do something. I know it's old-timey. Give a speech. Give a speech where you say, I want to be Prime Minister for 4 more years because I have a burning desire to get these 3 things done, and I'm the only guy who will do them. Make it about the future. What's the purpose of being in power longer? That hasn't been articulated. And until it is, you're not going to convince Liberals, independents, your opponents, nobody, voters, nothing.
Well, on that.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news there, Mr. Scott Reed, but I feel like your brain is either half full or half empty. Justin Trudeau is saying what he's going to do and why he needs to be in power for the next 4 years, and that's to fight climate change. That's to help Indigenous peoples, which he's failed to do in the past 9 years, but somehow 4 more years is going to get it done. And he's going to fix Harper's mistakes from over 9 years ago, which he has not been able to fix in the past 9 years. So his entire talking points of why he deserves 4 more points are, as Joey Tribbiani says, a moot point, a cow's opinion. This is absolutely insane. He does not stand a chance, and I feel so bad for anybody out there who is still somehow supporting the Liberals at the federal level or even the NDP. And as they say down south, bless your heart if you are one of those people. Anyways, that is my opinion, and I would absolutely love to know yours. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the video. If you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to smash the like button and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hope to see you guys on House of Canada later on today for the live stream question period. Bye for now.